The lane is open, and the production is happening inside it. A federal rulemaking written to restrict China's access to advanced memory manufacturing tooling turns out to contain, in the precise coordinates of its own perimeter, a description of the route it did not close. One rule sheet, 2 readings, and the decisive thing, the record never names. The document is the Bureau of Industry and Security Export Control Rulemaking, restricting advanced memory semiconductor manufacturing equipment to China, published in the Federal Register. It is a specific, detailed, and consequential piece of regulatory text. It names equipment categories, deposition tools, lithography systems, etch equipment. It specifies critical dimension thresholds associated with leading-edge dynamic random access memory production. It adds entities to the controlled list and sets out licensing requirements with a presumption of denial for covered applications. Read plainly, the document is a targeted attempt to deny Chinese memory producers the tooling they would need to close the gap with the dominant producers at the frontier node. That is what the text establishes. The record shows it. The node thresholds the document specifies are calibrated to the global frontier, meaning the leading dimensions that Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron currently occupy, or are approaching. That calibration is explicit in the text. What the text does not do is define the threshold relative to where Changxin Memory Technologies is currently producing. It defines the ceiling of the restriction, not the floor of the target's current ambition. Those are 2 different reference points, and the document does not acknowledge the distance between them. A threshold anchored at the global frontier is a threshold a producer may not yet need to cross in order to reach commercially relevant output. The rule is real. The gap between the frontier and the target's present node is also real. The document addresses only one of those 2 positions. Reading the same pages again, looking now for what the text carefully does not say, the first absence is unambiguous. The rulemaking does not contain a line addressing mature node production of the 5th generation double data rate memory standard at geometries above the document's critical dimension threshold. That category of production is not a named exclusion in the text, not a license class, not a restricted class. It is absent. A reader looking for the rule that governs tooling aimed at above-threshold memory production for the volume server and consumer market will not find that rule in this document. The document does not say that production is permitted. The document simply does not address it. Those are different conditions, and the record does not permit a reader to collapse the distinction. The second absence in the text runs through the packaging layer. Advanced packaging, the integration of memory dies through chiplet assembly, high-bandwidth memory stacking, and the interposer and substrate tooling that enables those configurations is not present in the restricted equipment classes, as defined. A manufacturer who cannot acquire the leading-edge front-end tooling the rulemaking covers, but who can acquire or domestically produce packaging capability, is a manufacturer the document does not address. The packaging gap is not an interpretive inference. It is an absence in the enumerated categories, verifiable by reading the list. A noise ordinance that sets its threshold at the level of a stadium concert does not regulate the neighbor's radio. The ordinance is real. The enforcement is real. The stadium is genuinely covered, and the radio is simply not in the document. Front-end node leadership and back-end packaging integration are 2 distinct routes to memory performance. A document that closes one and is silent on the other has written a map of the open route into its own negative space. The text does not say this. The text makes it so by what it enumerates and what it does not. The third absence is the one with the longest effective radius. The rulemaking does not contain a clause addressing domestic Chinese tool substitution, meaning the development or deployment of Chinese manufactured alternatives to the restricted equipment classes. The document governs transfers. It does not govern what a manufacturer may develop or what a domestic supplier may produce and deliver without any transfer subject to jurisdiction outside China. That entire vector is outside the document's operative text. A transfer restriction, whose effective perimeter is defined by the rate at which domestic substitution proceeds, is a restriction that may mean one thing at the time of publication and a materially different thing several years later. The document establishes the perimeter at publication. It does not speak to whether the perimeter remains in the same place over time. The text does not say this. The text simply does not address it. Taken together in the same pages, 3 absences define a lane. No line on mature node 5th generation memory production at above threshold geometries. No enumerated restriction on the packaging path. No operative clause governing domestic tool development. Those 3 silences, read against the precision of what the document does say, produce the document's most consequential content. The rulemaking does not state the intent of its drafters, and an absent clause is not the same thing as a deliberate exemption. The document does not say the packaging path was considered and left open. It says nothing about the packaging path. Those are different conditions, and the record does not permit a reader to choose between them with confidence. The document also does not establish what Changshin Memory's actual production volumes, yields, or node targets were at the time of publication. That data is not in the rule sheet, and the independent reporting on it is thinner than the confidence of some secondary commentary suggests. A later amendment, a supplement, or an entity-specific order could alter what the record establishes. The document read here is the published version, not necessarily the final version of the restriction. What the record does settle is this: the text as published draws a precise perimeter, and the production activity now being reported in the trade press sits, by the coordinates of that same text, outside it. The rulemaking is not a failed document. It restricts what it says it restricts, with specificity and with genuine consequence for leading-edge tooling access. Read closely, however. It is also a document that chose its perimeter, and a chosen perimeter has edges. The edges of this one run through mature node 5th generation memory, through the packaging layer, and through the domestic substitution question, and none of those edges are marked in the text. The restriction and the gap it contains are written in the same ink, on the same pages. What a document chooses to name, it controls. What it does not name remains, by the document's own silence, unnamed. The next document worth reading closely is the Domestic Standards Filing, the specification process through which Chinese industry groups have been quietly ratifying 5th generation memory interoperability requirements without reference to the export control perimeter. If the rule sheet mapped the legal lane, the standards document may be the evidence that someone drove it. Which filing should we read next? If close readings of the documents behind the headlines are useful to you, the subscribe button means you will see the next one when it comes.